McGrath comes in. It's on its way. It's there. The miracle on grass.
Owen with a kick to full forward. Cloak, not quite. Blair, Collingwood back in front.
The seed. He delays the give. Franklin. This is Buddy Franklin. This is the greatest showman. Poor fans can't bear to watch. They led by 28 points at one stage, but the perfect storm has erupted. Oh, who else? McDonald.
We finally made it after to be honest, it points to this season. We didn't know if we were going to get here to this moment in time, but none of that matters. It's all good because taking place this weekend in Perth at the amazing looking Optus Stadium, we get the 2021 Grand Final, and I could not be more excited. Well, I guess I could be more excited. The GWS was in it, but they're not, so is what it is at that point. But ladies and gentlemen, it's about time to preview the Granny. And best of all, not only am I joined by, the man that's always here, always knows his stuff, Coach Donnie Hess, but I'm also joined by a very familiar face. It's been a little bit since, was it last finals preview? But here we go. US AFL head of media and almost everything else that you can think of media when it comes to footy, soccer, cricket now too. The amazing Brian Barish. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thanks, Ross. I get my balls mixed up, so sometimes so.
Oh, I love it. Isn't this the best time of the year? And you have two of the crazy footy heads in the United States here chatting footy. This could not get any better.
Or it could not get any worse. I guess we'll see.
A little from column A, a little from column B.
Depends on perspective on that.
Depends on who you're asking.
Well, it's either we're going to combine these two colors and we're going to get something that looks great, or we're just going to get brown. So,
as opposed to brown low, which is something different.
Oh, no. Oh, there we go. Oh boy. Oh man, but ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here today. It's always a pleasure. Of course, I'm your host, Ross Allen, and we got a good one. So it's not only do we get some history with Brian, we get the all-Australian team done right by Coach Donnie, and he says he might ruffle some feathers. That's a quote. So I guess we'll see if that holds true. I am looking forward to the YouTube comments in this one as well. But we're also going to take a look at either team between the Western Bulldogs and the Melbourne Demons, take a look at how we got here, how they looked over the finals, and take a look at how they look after the prelims and heading into the most important game that most of these players will ever play in. And then also going to give you our Brownlow winners here. And also we're going to take a look at the grand final, of course, because not only will we tell you who's going to win the game, we're going to tell you which team is going to have the biggest fan base, and also if this year's halftime show can top last year's. And so we got a bunch of good stuff going on. Before hopping into things, just want to let you know something on the channel that dropped on Friday of last week. Of course, there was in-house in the MMA gym, undefeated fighter, Jared Milton, Lean Mean MMA. He's fantastic interview, really great story there. And so if you haven't checked out, you guys have been blowing up already, but really appreciate that. Go on over to thefourthlong.com/MMA and take a look at that today. But let's do we have to do this again? I know it's not as cold here. The weather is getting better. And was it in Australia? Is it technically getting to summer? Right? Yeah, it's going there. But nonetheless, it's time for a little story time with Brian. So, we might need to turn on the AC for this one if we're going to wear the proper gear. But throw on the sweaters, get a nice hot cup of, I guess, sometimes tea. Maybe just Vegemite soup. I don't know what the Australians do over there.
Ew.
I don't know if I would have went that far.
Yes.
Listen, I don't mind Vegemite.
I'm an innovator.
Vegemite soup? Oh, gosh. Listen, they sell like those Kraft singles with Vegemite already in them, supposedly.
Wait. What if you put the Kraft single, melt the Kraft single on the Vegemite?
Well, that's why anyway. It's like together at last. Yes.
Vegemite on the snack with the Kraft single.
Well, that would be good. I think that's called a Kransky. Wait, no, that Kransky is if the cheese is already inside. I just ate dinner. Why am I talking about food? What Bob Ross used to say is pull up a nice glass of lemonade, or Vince Scully, pull up a chair.
Vince Scully,
Anyway,
yeah.
let's do why not? Let's not go off on that tangent because Donnie and I will be talking for like 3 hours about about Rick Jeanneret or something. Anyway, so some history, shall we? Some brief history about the grand final. Just reiterating from last year is that what is now the AFL, what was the VFL, was founded in 1897. The first grand final was played the following year in 1898. That's because in 1897 there was a round robin format with the top 4 teams, and whoever had the best record at the end of the round robin won the premiership, and that was Essendon. It wasn't until the next year when the decision was made to expand that to include all 8 teams, irrespective of how they did in the regular season.
Now, real quick, just to interrupt,
yes.
was that the last time Essendon won the final?
No.
No, I'm just
but
playing with
that's a
those
very
Essendon
funny
fans,
joke.
but it does feel like that sometimes, doesn't it?
No, Ross, you're exaggerating. That is completely unfair. They haven't won one since the William Howard Taft administration. No, it's sooner than that.
Which is really,
I'm
funny, 'cause I
sorry,
think
sorry,
they're
Bombers
tied-
fans.
they're
You know I
tied-
love you
they're tied
guys.
for second with the most championships all time in the VFL AFL history.
They do. They just haven't won one since Pussy was a kitten. Anyway, so Melbourne. So they did for the next 3 years. They had all the teams. So basically, all the teams made the playoffs, made the finals, but it just determined groups. So the teams went into sections or groups. They would play pool play. The winners of each pool would play off in the final. However, if the winner of that of the premiership, of the minor premiership, the team that finished in first, was not involved in any of that, they had what was called the right to challenge. And this is important because in 1900, the Melbourne Fuchsias, as they were called, won their very first premiership, even though they finished in 6th. They went into pool play in the finals. They finished in a 3-way tie. They won the Group 1 percentage, and then won 2 games in a row, including beating Fitzroy, who won the minor premiership, to win their first ever title in 1900. Melbourne was founded in 1858. They can trace their heritage back to the beginning of the sport with Tom Wills, who is considered to be the founder and one of the founders of the game. And they are the oldest professional football club still in existence of any code. Older than American football, older than association football. They are the longest running club. So what is that, 163 years they've been around now. As we said, they were originally referred to as the Fuchsias until 1933, when their coach Frank Checker Hughes implored his team, "You are playing like a lot of flowers. Lift your heads and play like demons," and they've been known as the Demons ever since. They've also been known as the Redlegs for their Red Sox. This is their 19th grand final game. They have a record of 12-5-1. The one draw coming in 1948 when they drew Collingwood and then beat them a week later in the replay. Remember those? They are a streaky team in the league's first century. They had a three-peat from 1939 to 1941, and they appeared in 7 straight grand finals from 1954 to 1960. They won 5 of those 7. They lost in 1954 to the Bulldogs. We'll be talking about that in a moment. And they lost to Collingwood in 1958. They held Collingwood to the lowest score in a grand final in a mud-soaked MCG in 1960 when they held Collingwood to 14 points. They last won the premiership in 1964. That was also the last time they won the minor premiership. So Omen watch. It is the longest current premiership drought in league history, in league currently. St. Kilda in 1966 would become the longest one if the Demons win on Saturday. Since then, they've made it to the grand final twice. They lost to Hawthorn in 1988, and they lost to probably one of the best teams in league history in Essendon in 2000, a Bombers team. We talk about the Bombers. They went 24-1 that year to win the premiership. Probably their most famous player was Ron Barassi, who played 204 games with the Demons in the 50s and the 60s before going to Carlton. He coached on a number of teams from the 70s all the way through to the 90s. Coached them in 111 games. He's still alive. He's 85 years old, considered one of the great ambassadors of the game. And as I said, team with a lot of history and a long premiership drought. The team they are playing, the Western Bulldogs, originally and still officially known as the Footscray Football Club. They do business as the Western Bulldogs. They were founded in 1877, and they had names such as the Scraggers. They were also known as just simply the Scray. As many teams are known, Collingwood is known as the Woods, Essendon known as the Dons. They were just known as the Scray. And they got their nickname in 1928 when a bulldog ran on a field during the game, and they became the bulldog. It kind of like Geelong, how they became the Cats when a black cat ran on the field and it was considered a good luck charm. It's interesting how you don't need a focus group to come up with some of this shit. Anyway.
Wait, that was a good luck charm? So in Australia, the toilets flush in reverse and black cats are actually good luck. Is that right?
That's what happened to the Cats. But they're not in the grand final. The Bulldogs are.
Oh, they definitely no. Yeah, that preliminary final was not great.
So the Bulldogs were excuse me, were, as we said, founded in 1877, and they joined the Victorian Football Association, which was the forerunner to the VFL, which is now the AFL, and the old VFA is now the current VFL. So go figure. They won 9 titles, including in 1923 and 24. They were invited to join what is now the AFL in 1925. It wouldn't be until 1954 when they defeated the Melbourne Football Club in the grand final that they would win their first grand final. Their second grand final, they made it in 1961, where they lost to Hawthorn, and then they would not make another grand final until 2016 when they defeated Sydney. So 3 grand finals, 2 wins. So this is their 4th chance at their 3rd title. They're probably their most famous player is a guy by the name of Ted Whitten, who is like the Don Mattingly of Aussie rules football. He's simply known as Mr. Football. 321 games, all with Footscray from 1951 to 1970. He coached them in the 70s and in through the 80s. Died of prostate cancer in the 90s. There's in 1995 there is a celebrity and legend game held every year that bears his name, and the home oval of the Bulldogs, which is also the home to the Western Bulldogs AFLW team, bears his name as well in VU West Whitten Oval. So that's a little look at the 2 teams that are playing on Saturday. A lot of history and kind of interesting. It's almost, think of almost like a Super Bowl where you've got like 2 teams from the Eastern Division flying cross country to play in the largest game of the season.
Well, that was absolutely fantastic. I mean, I'm sure a little more to pull from there in a sport that's every time, like, I know how long the AFL has been around, but ever since I got into it, it's always been almost mind-boggling compared to the other sports I watch. I know the MLB's, or at least baseball in America, has been around for a while, but my main sport, NFL, the AFL more than doubles its age. So to me, that just blows my mind. So fantastic stuff here. I wish school was this like informative and fun. Damn.
I mean, to also really quickly to put it in perspective, the oldest NFL team is the Cardinals, and they were founded the second year that the VFL was around. In 1898. So that gives you kind of an idea as to like just the longevity of some of these teams.
Mm-hmm. It is quite the impressive feat with this one. And oh boy, so we go from some really fantastic Australian history to the all Australians. And Donnie, you come on. I tried to hype up at the beginning of the show. You said we were going to ruffle some feathers here. So are we going to be able to follow through? Is that a promise?
We'll definitely have to see because I think one of the biggest things that happened over the last week was there was the announcement of the All Australian and some of the awards have come out. And one of my biggest pet peeves that I have with the All Australian is how many times I hear people say, "We got to get this guy in." I'm like, no, you don't. If he's in a position that there's other guys that are better that are in the team, leave them out. Like, I don't mean to be rude. Like, some of the things, some of
Yeah,
the
you do.
guys, well, it is rather annoying that Darcy Parish is put at the halfback line. He never, I mean, half forward line. He never played half forward the entire season. There are no wingers on this entire team. The regular All Australian team that was announced has no wingers, meaning they've put guys that have never played that position in the All Australian team. So one of my pet peeves is I make an All Australian team that actually has the correct players in the correct positions. So I will very quickly, like I said, if I ruffle some feathers, let's see it in the comment section. What you think? Why I'm wrong? I can't wait to see this. So this is my
Donnie,
All Australian team.
let's face it. Not to interrupt, but let's face it. If you're not ruffling feathers, you're doing
You're
something
not
wrong, baby.
Oh yeah.
exactly. So here we go. We will start on defense because defense wins championships. In the full back line, we have Port Adelaide's Alir, Melbourne's Stephen May, and Melbourne's Jake Lever will be our fullback line. And our halfback line, I like halfbacks that can get the ball and move it upfield. So I will go with the Western Bulldogs' Caleb Daniels, Geelong's Tom Stewart, and Brisbane's Daniel Rich. At the ruck spot is Big Maxi gone from the Melbourne Demons. On the inside midfielding positions, here's where I think a few people are going to lose their minds. I have Gold Coast Tuke Miller, Melbourne's Christian Petrarca, and Port's Ollie Wine. The wing positions see Carl Amon from the Port Adelaide Football Club and the Adelaide Crows' Paul Seedsman. At the half forward line, we see Toby Green, center half forward Tom Hawkins, and the other half forward flanker Jake Stringer. At the full forward line in the pockets, we'll see Charlie Cameron from the Brisbane Lions and Sydney's Tom Papley. And at the full forward spot, Carlton's Harry Mackay. On the bench, I picked one from each position because I feel that Fremantle's Sean Darcy deserves an All-Australian nod. I think he had an incredible season. All due respect to Brodie Grundy, but Sean Darcy had an incredible season, so I'm going to have him there. Defense, I know Carlton's defense has been weak this year, but I love Jacob Wiedering's game this year. I love Jacob Wiedering as my defender. On the midfield from the bench, I have Darcy Parish, one of the best seasons that he's ever had, an incredible performance. And the forward on the bench is Melbourne's Bailey Fritsch. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the All-Australian 22 from Coach Hess in the correct positions.
Oh, that's one thing I wish we could see is like a Harlem Globetrotters type game where we actually could put the All Australian team just against what VFL team gets to be the sacrificial lamb? Wouldn't that be fun?
Well, should we tell him about? Well, they actually there for a while they did. What
Really?
they would do is they would take the All Australian team, and they would represent Australia in the international rules series with Ireland when they played. That All Australian team would come together. They would go over and they would play the international rules series with Ireland there for a while. In fact, there was one year they actually did it an all Indigenous team.
Was it even competitive?
Ireland always plays really well because it's basically it's a combination of Gaelic football and Australian football. They play with the Gaelic round ball, the Gaelic square field, but they have Aussie rules marks and tackles and stuff like that. So it's kind of depends sometimes where it's played. Usually the Irish win because they handle the ball a little bit better because they're used to the round ball. But there's Australian teams that have done well in the international series.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and there's talks of the series is sometimes kind of maligned because it is very much this one-off thing. It's not really played other than it's played in the U.S. surprisingly because there's a lot of the local teams here will play like local Gaelic clubs in what they call international rules or compromised rules. They've almost had a game here in New York not too long ago it was canceled under very controversial circumstances, which we will not go to in a public setting. That is a story for off the air. But I think the biggest thing with that as well is that, and Donnie mentioned, is that Ireland generally does pretty well. The one thing that has always been kind of a skin in the craw has been the physicality, because and that's kind of the you've got the skills, they have the Gaelic ball and whatnot, but there's no tackling in Gaelic football. And there was, in fact, they put the series on a couple of year hiatus a few years ago because the Irish claimed that the Australians were being too rough and there were a lot of fights. So that happened as well. Yeah, it's interesting when you say, it's almost like having, when you have like an all-American team in college football. It's like, okay, but who are you going to play? Other than other than the fact that you could play the team of professionals at the same time. But it's kind of similar to that.
Hey, that's some cool stuff right there. At least, the NFL would never do it. It would always be cool to see like the all-pro defense against offense, but at the same time, it's not worth the risk of injuries, or probably not going to get paid enough for that game anyway. So there's always that you got to throw into. But I love that, Donnie. Fantastic selections there. I love how you're able to get the Sydney Swans player in there in Papley too. Although that's not even a homer pick, that's just very well deserved. It's okay that I forgive you for no Toby Green, I guess, but
Hey, that's
is what
20,
it is.
No Toby Green. Toby Green's in my half forward line.
Oh yeah. I'm
Like,
I'm blanking. Excuse me.
Like strike.
I think Toby Green should just be Toby, and your whole team should just be Toby Green, right?
If it were only that simple.
No mummy. Okay.
Mummy's,
There's a line.
Mummy's good for one thing, and that's giving away at least 2 or 3 free kicks because of his clumsy tackles.
I was just going to say stepping on people.
Only true NHL fans will get this. He's the Carl Dykehouse of the AFL. I will say this, Ross. The fact that he picked one Sydney Swan is about 21 fewer Sydney Swans than I thought he was going to pick.
I honestly. Yeah, I'll give you credit, Donnie, here. For the whole year, you've been pretty solid, so I'm not too surprised ultimately. I was thinking maybe at least a Buddy pick there, but
I thought Buddy was there, but my biggest...
If he made it to 1,000, he would have had to be on there, huh?
It's not even that. It's just more of he did miss 3 or 4 games this season, and I understand at his age. And he still had a relatively good season, but
yeah.
If I put guys in proper positions, well, he's going to either play center half forward or full forward, where Harry Mackay wins the Coleman Award.
Yep.
So it's hard not to put him at full forward. And Tom Hawkins was second or third in the Coleman Award. So, and he can play center half forward or full forward. He can play either. So I really already had 2 guys in those positions, and I don't want to put 4 talls. I mean, that's what I like. Tommy Papley, I think, had a really good season. Charlie Cameron's always a dangerous one. I mean, there are a few homer picks that I could have went with, but I went more off of, like, Port Adelaide gets a lot of love in this team because they had a really good season. The Western Bulldogs got a couple of guys in there. The Melbourne Demons got several guys. I tended to pick the teams that were really up there towards the top most of the season because they had some of the best performers. And then for me, I threw a bone to Tuke Miller because I think Tuke Miller is one of those, if he didn't play for Gold Coast, if he played for Richmond, if he played for Hawthorn, if he played for Adelaide, if he played for Freo, if he played for the West Coast Eagles, he'd be there easily.
He'd be a superstar.
But his issue is he plays up at the Gold Coast, and not too many people want to watch the Gold Coast, and he was incredible this season. I can't not give him a tip. I mean, everybody was like, where's Clayton Oliver? Well, Clayton Oliver's great, but Clayton Oliver's one of those kind of like Tommy Mitchell. He gets a lot of disposals, but he doesn't always make the scoreboard impact that, say, a Petrarca makes or an Ollie Wines makes or a Tuke Miller. Tuke Miller made a lot of score involvements with Gold Coast this season. So that's kind of how I kind of based that out. And Darcy Parish just had an incredible season with a combination of everything. So that's why my four mids, that's how I picked that. And that's what I argue. Everybody's like, you got to get Bontempelli, you got to get Sam Walsh, you got to get these guys. Well, it's like, I'd love to, but their position is filled with guys I've already got in there, and I'm not gonna kick out a Carl Amon or a Paul Seasman who play wing, genuine wing, and kick them out for a guy that never plays there. So I mean, Walsh could probably play wing, but he plays mostly mid. So
I think that's the thing, is that Donnie's expecting it to be almost like when we talk about when we think of an all-star game or something like that, you expect it to be those actual positions, and that's the thing, is that it's not who are the best position players in each position, it's who are the best players. And I'm with you. I think it's kind of silly. I understand that sometimes positions can be fluid in footy, and there are guys who honestly and we're seeing more and more as rosters become bigger, is that there are players that are becoming more specialized. But back in the day, I mean, and especially even when I think about, and Donnie, you play as well as I do, everybody is a utility, and if you think about it, you need to be able to play just about anywhere on the field. Yeah, you might be more comfortable, you might be better suited playing up front, but if you're in a situation where where teams make adjustments, and let's say they stick more tall players up front, say, then if you're a tall player and you're used to playing on balling or whatever, you might end up having to man on somebody and playing strictly defensively. So I think that's sort of what maybe I would guess and say that's probably where it comes from, is the idea that anyone, if you plop them on the field, can play any position, irrespective of whether or not they have played those positions during the season. But it does make it in some ways, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But you are righting the wrongs, my friend.
Hey, Donnie, you're doing great work there. If only we could get you on the actual AFL media there in Australia, so you could go ahead and change things from the ground level. Also, speaking of Tuke Miller and Gold Coast, one of the things I'm looking forward to get out, I'm going to put out my chart. I'm going to put I might do a line chart, but of course, Brian, I don't know if you got this, but every round, I know I have missed a couple here and there, admittedly, but every round they give a fan count for Gold Coast, and so it probably ranged between 15 and I think it might have capped off at 35. So I'm looking forward to getting that chart out there, seeing track out through the season matchup with which teams they played there. But let's get. What do you say, gentlemen? Time for the meat and potatoes. It's time to actually get into the grand final stuff here, and of course the Brownlow as well. How are we feeling?
This is going to be I think this is going to be a very fun game. It's going to be excuse me, it's going to be a pretty packed house at Optus Stadium. Two teams with, we just talked about the history, but two teams with pretty solid fan bases. And I know this is the sort of game where, if it was being played at the MCG, that there would be more than 100,000 people there. But you know what? And you're only gonna see, I think, a lot of this if you troll through social media. Really, especially, Melbourne represents the heart of the city. They play their games at the Melbourne Cricket Ground. That is their traditional home. But there's a lot of people just kind of spread out through the region. Whereas Western Bulldogs, they represent a lot of the western suburbs. But Footscray, just to see them, that town, that suburb of Melbourne, once again have their team be in this game of games. It doesn't matter to them that the game is so far away, and even Melbourne, the fact that this is their first grand final. There's still a lot of buzz and a lot of excitement, and considering everything that's happening in Melbourne right now, they're under another lockdown. There's a lot of anticipation of this, and I think that you've got a team that has played, that hasn't won the minor premiership since the last time they won a premiership, which is 57 years, and a team that always has come one game short. So there's going to be a lot of really good stories here, and that's what, and it's in a place that has never hosted a grand final, but who loves this sport as much as they do, in Melbourne, and is going to have a lot of color and a lot of pageantry. I'm mad that this, I don't think that it was a great atmosphere in Brisbane last year. I think a lot of it was because of the reduced crowd. I'm worried that a lot of people are going to be like, yeah, we need to make it a night grand final because, there's the spectacle, and we're going to talk about that. But I think I'm looking forward to what should be a fantastic game, and hopefully it's better than the preliminary finals were.
Oh man, we had a good streak going down there. I did over on our Twitch, which of course you could watch the games, and also at least Muslim Grand Final with us here coming. You can live stream with us, watching along over on twitch.tv/Fourth and Long Radio. But our first two games, they were both 1-point contests. Of course, we had the trilogy of the Sydney Derby. And then we had Brisbane and the Doggies, and so that came down to 1. And then we go in, we watch a little preliminary finals action. It was not a 1-point game, but that's a fantastic way to introduce these couple teams. First team we want to take a look into first here is the Western Bulldogs. Of course, there were a lot of questions surrounding this team heading into the finals because they finished regular season 0-3. And they were easily the team that was on the had the lowest momentum going to the finals, but obviously their list, they have a crap ton of talent everywhere, and it's shown. I thought that they're still one of the scariest teams in the comp here, and they go out and look what they did. They've come storming back. They look fantastic against Essendon. They, like I said, they edged out Brisbane by 1 in a really well played contest there, and then stomped out Port Adelaide in the preliminary finals. They beat them by 71. A damn good team. They beat by 71. And they got the Melbourne Demons on the other hand. Of course, as Brian's pointed out, they were minor premierships for the first time in a long time. Last time that they won the premiership there as well. So they were able to do that with a fantastic after the siren goal by the captain. Oh man, that's still one of the best endings of any game this season. Then they go ahead and they just handle business because late in the season, in the regular season, I partook in these comments here where I was unsure about the Melbourne Demons because their defense, the thing that they've been riding hot on, relying on, wasn't looking as great, and then their offense wasn't there to pick them up. But they kind of silenced all of that because they beat the brakes off of both teams they played in the finals. They beat Brisbane and Geelong by an average of 58 points. So they look fantastic. They have had the best defense in the comp all season long. It hasn't been close, and now their offense is looking amazing coming into the grand final. And both these teams, as we want to throw it back, they did meet earlier in the season, around 11. Melbourne won that by 28. So, how are you guys feeling about either team here? Donnie, would you like to start us off with what you think about the Doggies?
This should be a very, very entertaining game because it's going to come down to what wins you champion. It's what in your head wins you championships. Is it really good defense with a good enough offense to get by, or a run and gun, heavily offensive team that's just good enough defensively to win you a game? It depends on what kind of streak you want to go, what you want to look at. For me, the biggest question I run into is, will the travel on the Western Bulldogs affect them, considering they've been in 5 states this entire final series? They've had to do the most travel, where the Melbourne Demons have been sitting comfortably in Western Australia for almost 3 weeks now. So there is that little change. But the nugget on the opposite side is that the Melbourne Demons have only played 1 game in the span of a month's time period. So it's going to be very interesting to see how these two handle it. The Doggies come in, and both teams seem to be relatively 100% healthy. So I think we aren't going to have to worry about the selection issues like we've had some years back where somebody's under an injury cloud and we're not sure, and you might get all the way up to almost a coin toss before you find out if somebody's playing or not. So this is going to be a cracking game. I agree. I think this could be just as good. The fact that the two teams split the series this year, Melbourne winning the first and the Western Bulldogs winning the second, I think this is going to be an absolutely cracking game. But if the preliminary final is any indicator, I think the Melbourne Demons are going to have the base of the fan support. And I just like the D's defense a little bit more than I like the Doggies offense. I think the Demons are going to win this one, but it is going to be an incredible final. I cannot wait for that. It's going to be an early morning, but it's going to be fun.
It's definitely going to be early morning. That's for damn sure. I did enjoy my ability this Saturday since there was no games, no stream. It was nice to be able to sleep through the night and not have to wake myself up at 3. So, the struggles of being American trying to watch this sport that's halfway across the world.
This is what happens, though, when you have a small human like I do, and that is sleep is an abstract concept. You're like, oh, well, I'll just sleep through the night, and then you hear a cry at 6 o'clock in the morning. And be like, well, one of us needs to sleep in, and I guess it's going to be none of us. Here's what I'll say about the doggies. Stop me if you've heard this one. The Bulldogs finished in 5th this year. They are, everyone is kind of like, oh, they've come from an elimination final on through to the grand final, but let's remember. They are a top 4 caliber team that just had a terrible stretch down the stretch. And I think a lot of people may have written them off because they were like, well, they won't have the double chance. They're going to be tired by the time they reach the grand final. Well, let's remember 2016 for a moment, shall we? They finished their season round 23 in Domain Stadium, what was Subiaco Oval. They had to play Fremantle at the end of the season. If I remember correctly, and I'm sure there is a Bulldogs fan out there or anybody who is smarter than me might correct me, I think they went home between the time that game ended and their elimination final game against the Eagles that they won in the first round. Then they came home for their semifinal win against Hawthorn, where again they were not favored, and then had to go to Sydney to defeat GWS in that probably one of the best prelim finals and maybe one of the best finals games in the last decade, and then come back to the MCG. Now, it's probably not the same as what they've gone through under very atrocious circumstances because at least they had gone home a couple of times in this. They haven't been back home in some time. As Donnie said, they've traveled really from coast to coast slowly as the country has been closing in on them. But the eastern part of the country has been closing in on them. So I wouldn't write them off completely. That being said, this is a much different situation, I think. The fact that they went into Adelaide Oval and beat a Port Adelaide team that I think everybody kind of expected them to be like, this is the year they're at least going to make the final. They're not going to be snake bit like they did. They laid an absolute egg, just as the Cats did. But I don't think anyone expected the Bulldogs to jump on the power like they did. Luke Bevo's one of the, he's a class coach. He's been to this peak of the mountain before. He's seen the view. I mean, I think the Demons win, but I don't think this is going to be a blowout. I'm with Donnie. I trust the defense of the Demons a little bit more, but there's just too many competitors on this team, especially when you've got Bailey Smith, Bontempelli, all these other guys. So I wouldn't write them off completely, and considering where they've come from and the fact that they've taken a similar journey to win in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, I agree. Like the
this is a tough game to
grand
tip.
final run.
In my opinion.
The 2016 grand final one it's like a carbon copy. It's kind of scary. Like I've seen it from several people. That's 2016. They start in the 7th seed and they run their way through it, and it's kind of the same thing with this year too. It's very almost eerie how similar the 16 run to the flag was in this one. So it'll be fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Man, this like I say, this game is really hard to tip in my opinion because there's really valid points for either side of the footy that you can make. Yes, I love the Demons' defense more. They've been way more consistent all year. Your offenses look fantastic in the last couple games, but it has been there at least late in the season that Doggies' offense is a little more consistent, I would say. Maybe a little bit more their ability to strike, I think, is there more. I think I'm a little more worried about when if this was a game of momentum swings, I'd be a little bit more worried about the doggies. And this is also one of the things where I'm kind of, we always have this, Brian. You put some great polls up there on the USAFL Twitter page, of course, at USAFL 1997, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's the one there. And you do like the heart, the head and the heart polls right here. The head and the heart tips.
Yeah.
My head, my head is easily saying the Demons, but my heart is right there with the Western Bulldogs. I might just have to go with that one. I think I'll tip the doggies here, and it's just going to be a phenomenal game. Much to my chagrin, because I don't want to, purely for jealousy reasons, I don't want to see Jalen's team win the grand final before my team does. Okay.
Yeah, you might have to wait a while, mate.
I'm fully prepared for that, and by a while you mean until 2022, right? Yeah, let's go Giants.
Yeah. Oh, listen, this is coming from a Philly sports fan. I know what I'm talking about. But I mean, it is going to be a very difficult game and you know what? It's really hard because the Bulldogs for many years had been those kind of lovable losers in a sense, and considering, I mean, it was them and St. Kilda. At least, St. Kilda had made it to several premierships, but of course they had that long history, especially at the very beginning, where they were just not very good. And the Bulldogs had that where they were always they had strong teams, but they just flopped in the championship. They were like the Cleveland Browns. They would just flop in that one game before they got to the big one, and then they finally made it. And they're going up against the minor premiers that year, and everyone's like, oh well, we're just here, we just won a close game, and I don't think anybody expected it to go the way that they did. So I really I think this is good. The matchup here is incredibly fascinating, and I think it transcends. It's two Victorian teams, but even with the game in Perth, I think it really transcends this. And just one of my friends from the community, Melanie Ray, who's a Dockers fan, who's based in Frio, saw the picture that you put up previewing this, the Barish's backwood, and she said, seeing your face next to my stadium in my city makes it feel real. Like, oh my God, we're going to have a grand final here. So you've touched somebody on the other side of the world already in that little extra way, which is fantastic.
Hey, it's one of my big goals here. If I could actually reach out to people halfway across the world, that makes me feel good. So Brian, thanks for propping me up here. Okay, that's very nice.
Gives him the pick me up of the year.
Oh boy, I don't want to hear that. Maybe I wouldn't go that far, but hey. And then also, so of course we got that going. One thing we will drop. So, two more things that we want to predict here. Okay. First, the last thing we're going to do here, of course, is the Brownlow, because that's a huge thing as well. Is the grand final. But also, focusing still in the grand final here, are we going to see a better halftime performance this year taking place in the fantastic Optus Stadium?
I'm going to say it's going to be. I think the spectacle is going to be greater, and there's going to be more people at this game than there were last year. I think it'll be good for TV, and you're going to see all of the people who, for Channel 7 especially, bleed on about how great it is. And Matt Thompson, I'm going to call him out. I have nothing personal against him, but I look at the man and I think to myself, he just looks very cartoonish. But he has these opinions about, he was like, of course, this was the same guy who they ran the grand final sprint is usually at halftime. And I'm a believer in tradition. I don't, this isn't the Super Bowl. They shouldn't have a halftime show. They should have the grand final sprint at halftime, do Oz kick, do whatever. They ran it during the first quarter last year, and about midway through the second quarter, he tweets, "Who's going to win the grand final sprint this year?"
Yeah, I remember that.
And everybody was like, "I think it's going to be this guy who won." I think it is. I think Birds of Tokyo, I think, is the name of the band that's doing this. The so much is usually put up in the lead up. The pregame is where it's at. I like that because it is a great lead in to to me, once the teams are on the field and the ball bounces, it's all about the teams and it's all about the game. And I feel that way about the Super Bowl too. I mean, Paul McCartney was on one year, the year that the Eagles were in, in 2005, and that was really cool. I hadn't even heard of it. Listen, I don't mean to sound like an old man, but I haven't heard of half of these people. When they said they were going to show The Weeknd at halftime, I was excited because that's my favorite episode of Bluey.
Oh, because if those gray hairs in your beard couldn't age you enough here, Brian.
I did just turn 40, so I'm getting pretty. But to me, I mean, it should be a great spectacle no matter what, though.
I'm looking forward to the light show. I always I love those Optus games where they do the light show is between the third and fourth term. I'm always a huge fan of with the Motley Crew. I got my first kind of look at that because I wasn't able to catch too many live games last year. My first year being a fan, caught that. Oh, was that Collingwood and West Coast? Right. Was that the grand final game?
That was 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
That was 18.
Who was in 20?
That was.
20.
You're talking
20
about
was
last
Geelong
year?
and Richmond.
Yeah, Geelong and Richmond.
No, sorry. I'm talking about it was the first round. It was my first game watching something at Optus. I think it was West Coast and Collingwood. Nonetheless.
I think so because that was the first time you got to see Mason
Cox kicked 3 goals in the first and piss off everyone. Oh, God bless you, Mason.
Later, it was a really good first quarter, and then the second, third quarter. I mean, he made impact, but he didn't make the impact. I always say
he got 3 goals. I'm looking forward to this though. The spectacle of Optus. It's such a beautiful stadium, and so I'm sure they're going to try to pull off something spectacular in their first grand final there. And also, if everything gets back to normal there in Australia, at the last one for another 50 years, 51.
We'll have to see. I'm kind of like Brian a little bit. I'm one of those. I'm not a big halftime show person. I really am more. That's
when he gets some food during the Super Bowl. At least.
And I'm one of those, the Super Bowl halftime performance, everybody's like, who's going to be it? And I'm like, well, that's going to be when I change the channel. Because I'm not a big musical. I'm one of those, give me 20 minutes, let the coaches make their adjustment. Let's play football.
Yep.
I don't want to be there another 2 hours. Exactly. I don't want to be there another 2 hours because they have to roll a stage on and get all the dancers on, perform, and then get them all off again. For me, it's tedious. I mean, they do it, and I think one of the other reasons why the game is being played the way it is so then they can get the concert, the halftime concert at dusk and in evening to where it's under the lights. So I think that's kind of that. But for me, I think it should be a little bit of a better spectacle because is going to be a full house. It's going to be in that absolutely gorgeous Optus Stadium, which I think is going to be absolutely fantastic for it. And I'm actually starting to even hear Melbourne sports writers say that they think that they should find a way to negotiate the contract where every 4 years, almost like the Olympics, that the grand final moves to one of the other states that has up to Sydney, up to Brisbane, over to Adelaide, and up West Coast every 4 years. So then it's not always at the MCG every year. That's crazy to me to think that there's actually Victorian media that are actually saying that now, which maybe, just maybe, we're maybe starting to see that budge a little bit. But unfortunately, the MCC and the members there are probably not going to want to lose any more grand finals. But it's kind of nice to see the grand final in a different location this year.
You know what's funny is for many years I was in that camp where they need to rotate it, and I think what we're seeing here is I think one of the things that we're seeing is we're seeing these new experiences, but watching the grand final last year, and again this crowd size was affected directly by COVID. I mean, in a normal year the grand final isn't at the GABA, but if there was no COVID, maybe we do see 50,000 people there. Maybe it is a little bit better of of a spectacle than what we got, because I felt that it was no more special than watching round 17 at the GABA on a Friday night or a Thursday night. And maybe that just was kind of, it just didn't feel, I mean, the season felt completely different. I was sitting in my living room watching it, and not in a bar in South Philly watching it with 100 of my closest friends, and friends who I haven't made yet. The it's to me, there is something very special about having that grand final in bright sunshine. I'm a big NFL films guy, and there is something different about watching some of those early Super Bowls. Watch like Super Bowl 7, just as an example. Game was played in Los Angeles with like a 12:30 kickoff. 12:30 on a Sunday afternoon. Brilliant, bright Southern California sunshine. Everything about the field and the fans, even on like grainy 70s film, popped. The colors of the jerseys, the aqua of the Dolphins, the yellows of the Washington football team, everything about that just seemed a lot different. And then you watch some of the games, even a couple of years later when they first had it in the Superdome, and it's definitely a lot muted. You look at maybe like a year afterwards when they finally had the game where it was more towards night. I think it was it the Steelers and the Cowboys in 1979. It kind of loses something in the translation. And yeah, when you're there, it probably looks fantastic and spectacular and wonderful, and there might be something different. It just doesn't translate on TV, I don't think. And that's the thing, is that, yeah, it creates an atmosphere if you're there and you're the players, but let's face it, a small percentage of the people watching the game are physically in the stadium. So as much as I would love to see it go around, there is something to be said about the tradition of a 2:30 start at the MCG every year. And non-Victorians aren't going to like it, and I empathize with that. But they've now gotten 2 chances outside of Victoria to see this. It's kind of, I felt that way for many years about the International Cup. I was like, oh, well, they moved it. And of course, they haven't confirmed that it's going to be in the Sunshine Coast in 2 years, but it's supposed to be back there. That's where it was originally supposed to be last year. And I was thinking to myself, like, yeah, there's footy clubs around there. I mean, it's rugby country mostly. And it is going to have, I think, a lot clearer air because it's going to be the biggest Aussie rules event. But you're not going to be as immersed in the game as you are in Melbourne, and that's the difference. I mean, so as much of an anti-Victorian, Vic bias, whatever guy that I have been, I've slowly been coming around to the idea that that the grand final belongs at the MCG. I do like the idea. Of course, I don't know how some of these other states are going to like the idea of maybe only hosting a grand final once every 2 decades, but it is what it is, I guess.
I guess maybe from an outsider point of view, and especially since I haven't seen a sold out crowd for the grand final at the MCG, I can't wait to see that happen again, just so I can finally get my first taste of seeing that many damn people in the biggest game of them all. So that excites me for the future.
And just to give you
at least live.
Yeah. And just to give you an idea, Ross, I guess, of the sheer size of that stadium, the first game I went to at the MCG in 2017 was Carlton and Essendon. The stadium was half empty, but there were 52,000 people there.
That's ridiculous.
I looked around and I was like, oh, the crowd's not all that great. And then I saw there were 52,000 people there, and I was like, I mean, it would have filled Marvel Stadium. It would have filled hell, it would have mostly filled the Link here in Philly, or some of these other states. It would have filled all of the baseball stadium. But yet, here in this cavernous toilet bowl almost, or cereal bowl of a stadium, no, the Vet was a toilet bowl. The MCG is a cereal bowl. Let's get that straight. This giant, Coliseum is only is only half full. There is something about that, and I think the only other stadium that size that unfortunately they've committed to not hosting AFL games anymore is ANZ Stadium, the Olympic Stadium in Sydney. And that's the only one that could sit, I think, 80,000 people, but the stadium is very, very narrow. And, Donnie, as a Swans fan, has seen probably way too many games at ANZ Stadium. Now, that was where the USA beat South Africa in 2011, but that's besides the point.
No, the easiest way to say it with the MCG is imagine, like, I think we're all college football fans here a little bit. Is like, take Michigan Stadium, cut it in half, and take the other half of Michigan Stadium and put it up on stilts up higher. I mean, that's literally what the MCG is. I mean, it's 50,000 low and then another 50,000 high. So that's why it's just an incredible vision to see 100,000 people all in this one area in this massive ground. But it's basically this cathedral, this Colosseum, basically a lot like the one in Rome. So it's a fantastic view. And I mean, and I know Brian and I have seen grand finals with 99, 100,000 people watching it live, and the noise is incredible. Like when Richmond won it in 2017, there was like 98,000 people, and the ball chants when the tackles were going, it's an incredible sound, let alone sight. And the crazy part is we're on the TV, we're not even there, and it's incredible just to hear it. So I can only imagine the people that had the pleasure of being in the stadium as that happened. So
even more so, Donnie, think about 80,000 people shouting, or 90,000 people all shouting yellow and black at the same time, not only in the lead up to the game, but also after after they won, when they had won the premiership. The noise that can generate from that stadium, even just watching some of the Anzac Day games, just there's nothing like it anywhere in the sports world.
Certainly something that's high up there on the bucket list, if not a grand final, at least a game at the MCG has to be. I talked to one of my buddies, in my old apartment I used to live at. He's from Perth. And was talking about what it might be like trying to get tickets to Optus, and he said, "Good luck."
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. In fact, one of my followers on my Twitter actually, unfortunately, may have gotten scammed out of like something like $300, trying to get a ticket, and was understandably not happy. But unfortunately, I mean, this may very well be a once in a lifetime opportunity for a lot of people, and there's going to be people who are, unfortunately, there are going to be people who are unscrupulous and are going to try and take advantage of other people, and there are people who are going to sell their tickets legitimately and still be unscrupulous. This is the world we live in, unfortunately. So it sucks.
And I actually heard this is how crazy it was, and I think there was some questions by a lot of people was, will the Western Australians, because Freo and West Coast aren't there, will they go? And what was it, they had 10,900 general admission, like last tickets that were left, like the last tickets left, they sold in 9 minutes. The queue just to buy tickets was over 100,000 for these 10,000 seats, little over 10, almost just a little short of 11,000 seats. There was a 100,000 person queue just to get tickets. So it is being embraced. There's tons of people going to go. It sounds like all of the events that are going to be over there are going to have a ton of people. So I'm super excited for it because it's going to look marvelous. The noise is going to be there. It's going to be just like our final. Yes, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the MCG 90,000, but 60,000 in Optus Stadium, I think, is still going to be a spectacular game. I cannot wait for it. I know it's 4 a.m. in the morning here, or 5 a.m. for Brian or 3 for you, Ross.
Yeah, we're going to be
it's gonna
multiple
worth,
time zones. It's great. That's
it's
one of the
gonna
fun
be
things
worth
about
it.
trying to get shows together like this. You got one time zone. You got to go to the next one. You got to go to the next one. Kind of spread out here.
I have you beat. We
Yeah.
did we did our virtual national show last year where we did for about 2 hours of it was all we recorded interviews and we had like Brad Johnson also used to play for the Western Bulldogs, Nick Del Santo of the Saints, we had Dermy Brereton, but I was in charge of putting together, we had a women's panel and it was we had Abby Holmes, who former Adelaide Crow and sideline reporter now for Channel 7, Sarah Perkins, who now plays for Gold Coast, Danny Marshall, American, who formerly of the Bulldogs, playing for possibly a team TBD. We had Jess Wuchner for the Brisbane Lions, and who else did I have? I think I had. It may have just been the three. It may have just been Perko and.
I think that was it.
Yeah, it was the three of them. Wusha I had done separately, but one of them was in. They were, excuse me. They were all in different time zones. I think Perko was up in the Gold Coast, which is an hour ahead of Melbourne, which is where Danny was, and then you had Abby, who was in Adelaide, which was a half hour behind Melbourne, and then you had me in the Eastern time zone of the U.S., who was trying to set up a Zoom meeting and an account that was based in the Central time zone.
Oh, jeez.
That sounds ridiculous.
So I at one point, and I erased it because I was like, this is the only time I need to do this. I ended up doing an Excel spreadsheet so that I could say, okay, if I'm ending at this time, this is what I have to set up time, and this is what I have to tell the other three women. It was almost like herding cats. And I have 3 of them. I've herded them before.
Oh, it's like when I'm trying to do like convert to Australian time. Or like when I was spending time in Japan, I had to like convert because I talked to my parents of what time do I do that, gotta get that done, and then that half hour time zone difference in Australia. I don't know which zone that is, but
Adelaide.
That's Adelaide, yeah.
Adelaide.
Yeah.
You assholes! Why'd you
Adelaide's
why'd you do that to me? Who does 30 minutes?
Well, there's one, and this is tangential, but I think where the Taj Mahal is, there's parts of India that are like 45 minutes, like 15 minutes ahead of, or an hour 15 minutes of like their surrounding ones. It's so weird how the time zone works. It's Newfoundland. Newfoundland is a half hour ahead of Nova Scotia, which is an hour ahead of New York. Now, listen to all these things that you're learning on the show.
I'll put this under the educational tags this week.
Yes.
NPR Radio, eat your heart out.
Oh, this is so good. But before we wrap, of course, let's hear our Brownlow predictions. Brian, start us off here. Who is going to win the Brownlow this year? Or who, at least in your opinion, should win the Brownlow and why?
Hey, Ross.
Ross,
I think it's going to be Ollie Wines.
It already happened.
Yep, I know. Yeah, I was trying to play the whole story with the first quarter sprint. Yeah, I just didn't execute it well. It comes down when jokes come down to execution. My execution was not there.
That Donnie was like Donnie was like trying to keep you honest.
It's
no,
okay.
that's funny. No,
It's okay.
Listen, Ollie is one of the reasons why Ollie's one of the reasons why the Power have gone as far as they have the last couple of years. It's a really dangerous midfielder, and part of that, that nice mix that they have of young players and vets, and it seems as a lot of people were predicting it. What's interesting to me, and I've only like barely read this article, but there was a study by well, in fact, let me bring it up here, by somebody at Loyola University in Chicago, who ran a let me bring it up here. Huang Win, currently studying applied statistics at Loyola University Chicago, was asked by ABC Sports, that is the Australian broadcasting company, to statistically predict the next Brownlow winner of Australian rules football. Don't know anything about the sport, neither did he. And I believe, like I said, I just kind of did this, but I think he got it right.
Wow.
Just running statistical analysis and stuff like that. So maybe the people who talk about, and mind you, I don't think the umpires have any access to the statistics. I think they just sort of, as they're coming off the field, they put it into an envelope and then it goes down to a mayonnaise jar in Funkenwagnall's porch. Again, I'm probably only people above a certain age will get that, but the but a guy who has the sort of just presence that he has in the midfield will take that, and he doesn't, he's a well-known player. He doesn't pop like a Dangerfield or a Gone or some of these other guys, but he's consistent, and all you have to do is show up and be consistently one of the best players. You don't have to earn 3 votes every game, but when you get 36 out of a possible 66 votes and you tie a record, you're doing something right. Either that or you're running in front of the umpires a lot going
The crazy thing about it is I watched the count, and I actually even listened to a few people talk about it. Is that Ollie Wines was one of those that after round 3, he became the kind of quickly well-known kind of favorite / dark horse. He was the guy. A lot of people were like, first 3 games he averages like 32 disposals, gets a goal in like 2 of the games, and has like 8 or 12 score involvements, and like he became kind of the hot take early in the season. But I think the most memorable thing for me in the count is how Darcy Parish and Sam Walsh kind of came out of nowhere during the middle rounds. Like I think people knew they would poll. People would not expect Darcy Parish to poll as well as he did. Sam Walsh at one time, there was almost this weird kind of gasp amongst the crowd when Sam Walsh at one time with 3 rounds to go was tied with Marcus Bontempelli, and everybody was like, whoa, was not expecting this. Like they had their little predictor, and Walsh was getting 3 votes in games they were not predicting. So it was very fascinating to watch that happen, to where I agree. I think if Sam Walsh continues the way he's going, I think he's going to win a Brownlow because he just makes impact plays. But I mean, Ollie Wines was the most consistent out of this whole year. I think Clayton Oliver's biggest issue was Christian Petrarca. That was his problem. And the other, and I don't know if you, Brian, have you actually watched the coverage of this, of the Brownlow?
I have in the past, yes.
Okay.
I didn't watch it this year because I kind of lost track of my days because that's how life is these days, and I was like, it didn't happen.
I understand. No, but if you get a chance, watch the coverage because it's hilarious watching the Melbourne guys. Because there's one game, I think it's around 20 or 21, where Gone gets the 3 votes, and you can see everybody in the table look at Ghani, go, Ghani, really? Like there's a joking atmosphere to it that I think is hilarious about it, and like you see the constant going back of Jack Rewalt. Like if you watch Jack Rewalt's reaction because he's on a Zoom all by himself, and it's absolutely gold. So I actually got a kick out of the Brownlow because it's like combo the Emmys with the fashion show at the start when they show all the partners of the players and different things like that, and then you kind of have the kind of lottery-ish style draft night. So it's really, really this interesting combination thing. So if you get a chance to watch it, it's definitely worth it because the count gets gold. In fact, there's actually a mess up that in the round where the Western Bulldogs and the Demons play the second time, I think it's round 20, the director messes up and starts to go to round 21, and you literally hear Gil go, we have one more game left, and it's kind of important. Western Bulldogs v. Melbourne. And everybody in the place starts cracking up because they know this game is huge because these points here could go to Oliver, to Bontempelli, to Petrarca. So it was just kind of this really funny moment that Gil's kind of like, yeah, Melbourne v Western Bulldogs, and then he reads off the votes. So you get a chance, watch it. It's definitely worth the entertainment value. It really is.
Live
brought up
TV's a bitch.
It's funny because I feel like the only people that know are basically the producers, because that's the only way they can get those stats up in time, because otherwise, like, you're pushing buttons. And listen, I've done that because for the Hawks here in Philadelphia, the last 2 seasons that we have had what they'll do when they determine who wins our version of the our team Brownlow, which is the the Andrew Lockhead medal, which looks like the Brownlow. I'll have to send you a picture of it. But anyway, before every game, everybody says, okay, write down your 5 best players. And then what would happen is that somebody would read them out, and I would update it on a spreadsheet, and I would have it like projected on the big screen in the bar. So I don't know how they do that unless they know, and they just like hit. And I've told them, like, I think it would be better if I did that, because I could do it on we don't want anybody to know who wins, not even you. And I'm just like, okay, sure. But, my fingers hurt. But he has a point. Donnie brings up a point in where Petrarca had players who were ganking votes. Wines didn't really have that.
Boak was the only one, but Boak wasn't polling as well in some of the games. So I think that's really because they said that he set a record for, I think he polled in like 18 out of 22 games, which is like a record. Like most people, you'll poll 15, 14, 13, but 18 games, that's a lot to poll. Even if you're getting 1 point, that's a point that several games for your opponents, they're not polling at all.
By the way, just to put a bow on the story with the gentleman, the mathematician from Loyola Chicago, who wrote this he wrote this program. And by the way, the funny thing is he had taken some data from, I think said like the last 5 or 10, and he goes, this must be a midfielder's award. No crap. But I'm bringing it up here. I think he may have managed to in fact, I think he did. He did the top 3. Yeah, he managed to predict the top 3 correctly. He ran the simulation through the computer 10,000 times and had Wines at 35, winning 35%, Bontempelli winning 23%, and Oliver with just under him, also 23%. He had Steele at 16.4%. The average number of votes that he had was way off for Wines. He had him getting an average of 27 votes, whereas he ultimately got 36. So there is something to be said, I guess, for this being a very formulaic process. When you have mathematicians who know zero about the sport writing programs and being able to predict that with the sort of alacrity that they are. But that's enough nerdiness for one show.
Well, we all know it. The NFL, the MVP is a quarterback's award unless something crazy happens. AFL midfielders probably going to get it unless something crazy happens. I'm still waiting for the date that the world can freeze over once we see a wide receiver win the MVP in the NFL the same year that someone in the AFL, a ruckman, wins the Brownlow. I think that would be a fantastic way to kickstart the apocalypse. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I think you might want to that'll be right up there with Cubs winning the World Series, that sort of thing.
Hey, how about this? Cubs winning back-to-back World Series.
Yeah. Something like that. The old joke about a guy from Boston dies and he goes to purgatory, and the devil tortures him, by saying, cranks it up. It was like, oh, we're going to crank it up to 100 degrees. No, that's nothing. That's Boston in August. Going to crank it up to 150 degrees. This is just Boston in July. Then he goes down the other direction and cranks it down to like 400 below zero. And the guy gets excited. Why are you celebrating? It's cold. It's really cold here. Oh, that means the Red Sox have won the World Series. My delivery wasn't very good on that, but you get the gist.
Oh
boy.
Oh man, that's good.
Are you regretting asking me on now, Donnie?
Oh man, I feel bad for anyone that's asking you to commentate the cricket. If this is what you bring to the airs. No, I'm just playing. Oh, that's good stuff. But I think that's just about to go and do it for a AFL Grand Final preview here. Just before we get to the outro here, I have to bring up. I pointed this out after the preliminary finals, and I think this might be one of the greatest things. I knew when this happened. It happened. I can't remember. Maybe close to around 13 or 14 when this dropped. But a while ago. Let's see. See, this is what happens when we do things live. I lose it. Here we go. A while ago, we had good old Heath Shaw talking about the grand finals, and he said, quote, "I don't think either of these teams," in reference to Melbourne or the Doggies, "will play off in the grand final." And so I just want to thank him for being a reverse prophet, because that man, he's so good at not knowing what he's talking about. He knows exactly what he's talking about. As soon as he said that, I should have put all my money on this. Oh, that's just a tough look there. But final thing, before we get into a special plug here from Brian, just final thoughts on the grand final and what we could expect on Saturday.
Go, Donnie.
Oh boy, I think it's going to be a competitive, hard-nosed, physical game that I think it's going to come down to efficiency in front of goal. I think whatever team can be more efficient in front of goal, I think is going to be the team that's going to hoist the cup at the end of the night.
I am half tempted to turn down the broadcast and listen to what is going to be Dennis Cometti's last ever game. He has said for sure he retired after the 2016 season, has been doing part-time work calling games in Perth for 6PR. He is coming out of retirement basically has said that this is going to be his last game ever, and then he's done. So I am tempted to turn down the radio and try and sync up the TV and listen to Dennis call one last game. I think whatever happens, it's going to be a memorable game. Hopefully it's a memorable game for the Demons fans, many of whom, there are Demons fans. I always think about this, and I have to share this story because it's about as old. A couple of years ago, my dad, who's a huge Eagles fan, he's a bigger Eagles fan than I am, but he tells a story of the last time the Eagles won a championship was the day after Christmas in 1960. And the game was blacked out in Philadelphia because in those days, the games were always blacked out, even if they were a sellout. So my dad, who was 12 at the time, sitting on the floor of my grandparents' house in South Philadelphia on that cold linoleum floor with the radio, listening to Bill Campbell call the game on radio. And he said, that was the last time that the Eagles won a championship. And here we are today. So think of like how many people, just as there were Bulldogs fans, 5 years ago, think of how many of those fans might get a chance to see their team finally win one after so long. It's a great story. So I would love to see it. I think the Bulldogs would be a deserving champion considering how their season has gone, but it would be really cool if the Demons ended up breaking the schneid.
That would be some awesome stuff there. I think my final just thoughts on the grand final is that the real winner here is going to be whoever team puts up the most points in this one. So, bold prediction. I know.
Great job, Booger.
Oh, man. That's... At least he's not Monday Night Football anymore. Because, that was so bad.
It could be worse. Could have been Sergio Dip.
Worse? Oh, my. Having the time of his life, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. At least, I'd rather have those two in the booth than Joe Buck and Troy Aikman at this point.
Listen, I watched Joe Buck host Jeopardy, and let me
Why
tell
did you
you,
watch that?
because listen, I watched
When it's
Jeopardy.
not on mute, watch on mute.
No, I watch religiously. I mean, that is how I met my wife, was trying out for that show.
Yes, I mean, fantastic story. I mean, I
Yeah,
think I saw on Twitter.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I've mentioned it a couple of times, but you know, he was on. Matt Amodio is the current champion. He's won 24 games, 24 or 25 games in a row, and he spent the entire game like fawning over him like the entire time, like, oh, he's doing such a great job. I'm like, this is one of those times where I wish you weren't very excited about, go back to your monotonic, but anyway, yeah. So yeah, I'm with you.
Oh man. But ladies and gentlemen, we cannot wait. Obviously, we're all very excited for the grand final taking place at Optus, and it's going to be a blast. We know all you're super excited for this one too, and we can't wait to see you over on our stream when a little before the game kicks off there. Of course, that's twitch.tv/Fourth and Long Radio. Unfortunately, I just realized this over the weekend. I do have some bad news about that one. Unfortunately, I won't be able to stream. We won't be able to stream the entire game, not because of you guys, but it's because I am flying out that morning to Denver for the weekend to go to the Broncos game. And I'll be watching the game. Won't be able to live stream the full time. So I know, bad news there. But nonetheless, we'll still at least get the easy half in there. And it's going to be a blast for that shorter period of time. So we really hope to see you guys there. I mean, Donnie, fantastic list. I hope we actually get some good YouTube comments out of that, and maybe some stuff on the socials once I do post that. So, of course, you can follow us at Fourth Long Radio on Twitter or on Instagram at Fourth and Long Radio, or you can stay up to date with everything Fourth and Long just by going to thefourthandlong.com. For AFL specifically, it's thefourthandlong.com/AFL. But I know we had some important stuff that we need to talk about, Brian. So go ahead, floor is yours. Of course, Twitter at USAFL 1997, or what was it? Is it just Bearish USAFL for your personal?
Yes, that's it. Very good.
Ooh,
look at you remember.
I got
look
the
at you
noggin.
remember stuff. Yeah. Well, you're younger. You can remember this nonsense. Yeah, just really quickly, of course, the end of the USAFL season is nigh, and we've got the national championships, which are going to be which are going to be held in Austin, Texas, the weekend of October 16th and 17th. We are finalizing our streaming plans at the moment, and if you follow the handles that Ross has just dropped, you can. Of
course, we'll all be linked because I know not everyone can remember. Like I'm a genius. What can I say? But
well, I mean, if you follow, if you give us a follow, you don't have to remember it.
Exactly.
but yeah, it will be. We normally, under normal circumstances, we have 40 teams and 1,000 players coming from around the country. Those numbers are going to be slightly smaller this year for obvious reasons. There's a couple of reasons behind that, which one of them will be obvious, some others which we won't get into here at the moment. But we are expecting, which should be a great tournament. We are hopefully as well going to be having, the plan is, we're going to be, having a live, I'm going to change the name of it. I was calling it the Seeding Spectacular, and I've come to learn that name is kind of weird. So we're going to come up with something new. It can't really call it a selection show because the teams have already been selected. So we'll come up with something for this year. But yeah, it's going to be a great tournament. We're going to have. I'll be there commentating. This will be my 7th year commentating and my 13th nationals, I think, as a player and a commentator. And Donnie's been to a few of these. He unfortunately won't be coming this year, but Donnie and I, like we said, we've called a couple of games. We got a chance to call a game a couple years ago, and it's a great event. And hopefully, if you're in the Austin area, if you're listening down there, by all means, come out and support this tournament. Just be safe about it, and should be a fun weekend.
And I'll hop in here too. I know this isn't completely connected to this year, but to any Australians that are listening to this, in future years, granted when COVID is no longer an issue that it is, and you guys can get over here, the USAFL Nationals tournament is one that I encourage a lot of Australians to come to, because I think it is the purest footy tournament that you can find outside of Australia, because it is 2 days of nothing but footy. There are at most up to 5 fields going on at one time. You have a bunch of footy headed Americans that are all running around. We're eating Aussie pies. We're drinking beer. We're enjoying the games. We're calling games. And it is so much fun, because you kind of immerse yourself in footy for 2 full days. It is absolutely a blast. So if you ever get a chance, again, COVID granted, that you can, this is the one thing I tell everybody to go to is the USAFL Nationals is the tournament you want to go to, because it is just an absolute blast.
And I've had people, even, we've had special guests. We've had umpires. We've had Ray Chamberlain. We've had Shane McInerney. We've had a couple of others. We've had people, Kevin Sheedy going back many years, Bomber Thompson. We've had Dermot Brereton come over. We've had people who have expressed, Aaron Phillips most recently. I mentioned Sarah Perkins. We've had her come over. Catherine Smith, who now plays for GWS in AFLW. We've had a lot of, Aussies, people who have grown up with the sport, who have come over here. They said it's almost like a pilgrimage. It is very much pure. And the thing to remember, and those of you who are listening in Australia who aren't terribly familiar with the league, remember that 75% of the people who play in the US AFL are American. This isn't a bunch of homesick expats who are trying to keep the flame alive. This is a sustainable competition, and it's cool whenever a friend of mine through a number of the podcast circuits, Andy, had come over from Melbourne and was kind enough to actually help us out doing the score bug on the broadcast. But he was even saying, like, I felt simultaneously like I wasn't at home, but yet was at home. We don't have anything. He said, I've never seen anything like this at home. But at the same time, there was a guy who was sitting on one of those captain's chairs, one of those foldings chairs, and it had a cardboard sign on the back that said MCG members only. So
That's awesome.
Oh, man.
It was, it's full of spectacle. And I'll say this as well. If anybody ever gets a chance to come out there and if you're an American who's always wanted to be involved, what's great about it is that many of the friendships that I've made in the game, I've met a lot of wonderful people since I become media manager, but before that, just mingling with everybody. And you only, during the season, you only play a couple of teams a year. Growing up, playing here in Philadelphia, you play New York twice or three times a year. You play DC twice or three times a year. You need to play Boston once or twice. And I love those guys, but going to the same place and getting to meet people from the West Coast, from down in Texas. Sonia Lavelle, who helps me out on social media, just one day in 2013, like on the Saturday or the Sunday, they had these really nice. She and her husband ran the Houston Lone Stars for several years, and they had these really sweet looking Houston Lone Stars hat. And I just kind of said in passing, as I was pointing at, I was like, I would love one of those, and I wasn't expecting anything. I was just like, I love those hats. Would be cool if I had one of those. And I just kind of walked off. Well, Sonia found me either the next night or that night. I forget whether it was Saturday or Sunday, and like at the after party, and handed me a hat. Like, didn't know my name, didn't know what team I played for. Literally just like saw it, like bumped into me and like pulled a hat out of her purse and went, here. And
Wow.
So that's the sort of that's really, I guess, the sort of atmosphere it is. Winning a national championship is fun. I never won one. In fact, the one time that when I was playing, the team went to the grand final, I was on the bench the entire time. I got to call my team winning a grand final in 2018, and they handed me a medal. They said, if Merrill Reese gets a Super Bowl ring, you get a championship medal. But it's such a fun event. So if you're enjoying it, and if you're based in Australia or anything, just tune in and watch it. It's fun. It's a great competition, and yeah.
And of course, you can find all this stuff and even your local team, because there's a lot of them, and chances are that there is one, at least somewhat close to you. You can go on over to usafl.com and find everything there for yourself if need be. But, gentlemen, it's about that time. Brian, thank you very much for joining us. It was a pleasure. I always love the mix of history. It's a mix of history that's really good stuff that we're talking about. Also, the most obscure stuff you might ever be able to hear about. So, you have range, sir. That's all I have to say about that.
I've got something. I right now range is probably the best thing I have. No, I appreciate it, and thanks for letting me come on and nerd out a little bit.
Hey, that's what we're here for. And Donnie, as always, thanks for bringing the heat with your not only the team of the rounds, but the all Australian as well. And oh man, are we excited for the stream?
I'm excited for the stream. A little sad that it won't be the entire game, but it might actually let me relax a tiny bit when it comes to it. But it's been an
I'm
awesome.
sorry to disappoint everyone, but
it is not a problem. But the other thing is, real quick, I'll do my plug here.
Yes.
Keep an eye out on the channel. I am slowly I am going to do another fan series over the off season this year. This year, I'm going to interview Australian fans, whether they're Australians here in the States or over in over back in Australia. I cannot wait for this. This is going to be super exciting. Hopefully this year I actually get a Gold Coast fan. We'll have to see. and the best part is that AFLW will get started here soon. So keep an eye on for the AFLW round reviews, and who knows, maybe we'll see Brian hop on and review an AFLW round with me again this next season. So keep an eye on for the Donnie's Disposals, the fan series, and the AFLW reviews over the off seasons. We won't be too far away.
No, we are not. But after this, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the hell out of the grand final. Enjoy whether it be your meat pies, your snacks, or whatever else you might be enjoying on this. Maybe just go ahead and go crazy. Have a whole jar of Vegemite. I don't know. You do you. I know I probably heard that's not a good recommendation, but
No.
A little excessive. A little excessive.
And then also just keep an eye out. Of course, next week we'll be giving you our full grand final and finals breakdown. Then the week after that, we will be doing our season in review. So go ahead. If you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And follow us. You can also follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere else you get your podcast from. But gentlemen, please, and Brian, I mean, if you want to stop by the stream, of course, the invitation's always there. No pressure. No pressure.
I'm sure I will pop in at some point in between live tweeting the game, because I'm hoping that the game's going to be on Fox Sports 2 this year. So hopefully we'll get a pretty decent crowd. I don't think it's going to be like last March, where I was literally I felt like I was literally drowning in tweets.
You were a celebrity. You were 100% a celebrity that for at least a day.
No, but it wasn't me. It wasn't my account. It was the US AFL account. I guess we were sort of the account. And then, but the people, I guess, in Australia that were kind of picking it up, in addition to the Americans that were picking it up, it was almost like everybody was discovering that we existed. It didn't matter whether you were Australian or American. It was pretty neat for a minute.
Fingers crossed that you get the same results this year too. That'd be awesome.
I have to admit, at that time, I was mostly doing the Roosters account. I can't tell you how many connections to Australia we got that night as well too. So it's one of those. It's a really good recruiting night if you can do it correctly. So
I'll tell you what, Donnie was keeping pace with me pretty well, because he was like, it was almost like a race. Like, who's going to get to this random person tweeting? Is it going to be Donnie or is it me? And finally, I was like, Donnie, this is great. How would you like to do this for the league account?
Mm-hmm. And I have, and the sad part about it is this year is I didn't get a chance to talk with Brian as much this year to do it, to go through the account, and it's been kind of a hectic year this year with trying to run the Roosters account, trying to do my own account too. So it's always been kind of fun. But I think
welcome to my life from like 2014 to like 3 years ago.
I can
when
only imagine.
when I was still running the Hawks accounts too.
Yeah, one time I should just tell him, it's like, hey, I'm always going to be up for the Sydney game, so if you want me to tweet, if you want me to use the USAFL account when the Sydney game is on, I'm more than willing to do that because you know I'm going to be up. So
sometimes I'll catch Donnie. I'll see a tweet from the Roosters account, like, oh, that seems like one probably from the Donnie account itself.
I've had to delete a few. I caught that. In fact, actually, I think Peter Holden one time. I don't know, Brian. Did you see the one time I accidentally tweeted about a Roosters game on the USAFL account because it was on my phone trying to do something really quickly, didn't even pay attention, sent out a tweet that was supposed to be from the Roosters account and went in the USAFL account.
Yeah, I did.
And Peter caught it and went, not sure if this is supposed to be from this account, and went, crap. So I deleted it.
That's okay.
Oh.
That's okay. I've unfortunately done things that were meant for my personal account on that account too. It's like somebody was commenting about a surgery that they had, and I accidentally commented or I liked it from the USAFL account, and I went, I should probably not do that.
I've had too many times where on Instagram I'm trying to post onto my show's account that I accidentally posted my personal account. It's a big mess, and we love deleting everything, but. We digress. We've dragged this. I think we've dragged this outro out long enough, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. If you have, I commend you. You deserve a Brownlow of your own.
or at least a full-blooded Aussie beer of your choice.
At the least, enjoy the hell of the grand final. We hope to see you in the stream. And ladies and gentlemen, just enjoy the coup de grace of the 2021 Australian football season.